Well, there's a couple of things we should probably look at on the agenda. One of them is the flag salute, which I was like, oh, are we trying to add this back in? And Greg let me know, no, it was just a mistaken copy paste from a previous agenda. So unless there's big objections to that, I would suggest we take it out. And then we also at our board retreat spoken to addressing the last two goals that the board had talked about and changing the agenda on that a little bit. So I'm not sure if anybody would like to make a motion on those two things or what the feeling of the board is. No feelings?
I'm sorry, what was the second thing, Brandy?
I'm sorry, the first thing was removing the flag salute from the agenda, and the second was to add the final two board goals to the discussion under new business.
I see. I think we can just make that motion when we get to new business. I think you're supposed to wait for that.
As long as we're all clear on that's kind of the direction we're heading, and after the updates, we can decide to add those on if we want, but we will be taking out the flag salute part. So reviewing the agenda, we've got election of chairperson and vice chairperson. Then we'll go into public comments. I believe we have 16 this evening, so we will limit them to 3 minutes each, just in consideration of time to ensure that everybody has a chance to speak. Then we will go to our consent agenda, board and superintendent comments, and a couple of new business items. The designating signatories for buildings, getting it up from more than our reopening plans, and hopefully having the energy after that to have our discussion around board goals.
Hey, Brandy.
Yes, Dave.
So while we're in Zoom, we're taking out the Pledge of Allegiance and we bring it back when we meet back in person, right?
Oh, of course. And and it's different for every group too. I know, for example, in New Rotary, we're still doing Pledge of Allegiance as sort of a, standard kind of thing that we do. So I'm definitely not opposed to adding it back in. I just think, it's up to us. We haven't added it yet, but it's certainly not gone and forgotten.
Got it. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Are there any questions around the agenda? Nope. Okay, let's move into electing our chairperson. I was going to let Ron kind of take this since it feels weird to have the discussion when I'm the current chair, but he's not here yet, so it's odd. Every year for people in attendance, every year in July, the board appoints and elects a chairperson to serve out the coming school year. And that's why we do this every July. So is there discussion or motions around that?
I have a motion. I move that the Newberg School District Board of Directors elect Brandy Penner as board chairperson for 2020-2021
Point of order.
I'll second that.
Point of order, Madam Chair. You did not formally open the nominations.
So sorry, Brian, my mistake. I would like to open the nominations.
I nominate Ron Mock
for the next year.
I nominate Ron Mock.
Okay.
I second that motion.
It's not a motion yet, Dave. It's just a nomination.
All right. I would also like to nominate Ron Mock also.
So can I not make the motion then?
You can nominate whoever you'd like.
Okay, well, I still nominate Brandy.
And I'll second.
Okay. So since we have, are there any other nominations? I should put that out there first. Okay, without other nominations, let's go ahead and take a vote. So Brian, would you like to make a motion regarding your nomination?
I don't believe that's how it's done, Brandy. I think you just call for a vote on each nominee, and the first one to get a majority of the vote becomes chair.
I would like to have a vote on each specific one. So at this point, I would like for you to make a motion regarding.
Per our rules, that's not how it works.
Right, Brian.
I can make a motion, Brandy. I can make a motion. I'll move that the Newberg School District Board of Directors elect Brandy Penner as board chairperson for 2020-2021 school year.
Point of order, per our rules, per our policy, that is not how this process works. You have to take it in order of the way they were nominated. So we have to vote on Ron, and then we can vote on Brandy.
Brian,
What? Those are the
I'm
rules.
going
That's how it
to
works.
spend the time exactly right now, and I'm going to look it up so that we can ensure that we are following Newberg School District Board policy. So please give me 1 minute.
Sorry, I'm late. Brian, can you explain what's happening?
So she opened nominations. I nominated you, and Inez then nominated Brandy. And so we're supposed to vote on the nominations in the order they were received per.
Except I haven't accepted a nomination. I won't accept it.
Fair enough.
Do we
Then
have,
we proceed to the next candidate. Since he's turned down the nomination,
Has Inez has been seconded or not?
Yeah, Bob seconded.
I don't believe nominations require a second, but
Oh.
Madam Chair, I would move to reopen nominations since Ron declined.
Now, wait a second. Can I ask a question here? Brandy, nobody's nominated Brandy yet.
I did.
You did, and she's on the ballot? No,
Yep.
then I do decline.
She would be the next one in order. Yeah.
I do decline.
Brian, I'm having a confusing time here because I'm not finding it in policy, and I'm wondering if what you're referring to is Robert's Rules of Order.
It's probably Robert's rules, yeah.
Okay,
I thought those were used as a guide.
So
For
I
our
did read.
policy, we follow Robert's rules of order.
I did read the policy, and we do accept nominations, and then we vote on them in order. And as
Okay.
soon as somebody gets majority, that person wins.
Okay.
And if we don't get a majority, then I don't know what happens after that. That's interesting. There's nothing in the policy about that. Because you could, if you had 3 candidates, not have anybody with majority pretty easily.
So, Madam Chair, I move to reopen nominations since Ron has declined the nomination and he wasn't here when we were doing that.
Yeah, of course. Go ahead.
I nominate Bob Woodruff.
And I would not be able to do it this coming year.
I nominate Dave Brown.
do we not have any discussion on all this, you guys, or we just nominate and vote? Is that what we do?
Yeah, we don't discuss it. We nominate and then we vote.
Do you accept the nomination, Dave?
Yes.
Okay. Any other nominations? Okay. We'll go
Review to
in
me, we
order.
have 3 nominees?
No, we have.
Bob declined it, you declined it, so
I
we're,
thought somebody said it. Oh, Inez made the nomination. Okay, that's clear. Okay, thank you. Sorry.
That's okay. You had to jump in. I got it.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll go in order. The first nomination was for myself. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Are we discussing, what do we discuss now, Randy?
we're not supposed to, there's no
Okay,
second.
so we're not supposed to discuss. Let's just go ahead and vote and get this over with.
Deep breaths. Thank you. Let's go ahead and vote. So all those in favor for myself, Brandy Penner, to be chair for the 2020-2021 school year, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
2 opposed, 5 in favor. I'm assuming that means that we do not move on to the next candidate. As it was a 5-2 vote.
Correct.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Randy.
I will continue to serve the board in the best of my capacity. Let's move on to vice chair.
I nominate Ron Mock.
I would accept the nomination. Thank you.
Okay. Are there other nominations? Okay. All those in favor of Ron serving as vice chair for the 2020-21 school year, please raise your hand. Say aye.
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 That passes unanimously. All right. So next up, we've got public comments, and I just want to kind of give a little quick reminder to everybody. The Newberg School Board invites and encourages citizen attendance and involvement. The board encourages citizens to share their ideas, opinions, raise questions, concerns, or compliments. And thank you to everyone who has submitted a request to speak and for those who have sent in comments again this week. In order to conduct a timely meeting, we ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes. Also, requests for comments during the meeting are not accepted. When called, please state your name, your relationship to the district, your place of residence, and the subject of what you will address. The board may choose to not address your request if the topic is outside the scope of board governance. We ask that you remember that Oregon law prohibits us from discussing specific employees or their job performances. I also ask that your comments focus on board actions and refrain from personal attacks on board members. Thank you for taking the time to be with us here tonight. As a board, the comments we hear help guide us in our decisions and help educate us as leaders in this community. So let's get started. It worked out pretty well on Saturday for me to call the person who was coming up to speak and then also the person who was next in line. So I think we'll go ahead and do that again. So the first public comment we have tonight is from Stacy Gout. And Greg, can you make Stacy a panelist? Thank you.
And Brandy, you want to announce who's next?
Yes, sorry. And next up is Casey Petrie. Hi, Stacy, we see you.
Hi, guys. Can you hear me too?
Yep. All right. Oh, I'm sorry. Really quick. Bob, do you mind being the timekeeper again since you did such a good job on Saturday? Okay. Sorry, Stacy. Just 1 second.
No worries. I'll wait.
So Bob will hold up a little sign that will say 1 minute and then 30 seconds and then time, just so you can kind of gauge your comments. All set, Bob? Okay. All right, Stacey, go ahead.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank the Newberg School District Board for committing to be an anti-racist school district. My name is Stacy Gott. I'll be starting my 2nd year in Newberg Public Schools as a school psychologist, and I've been a Newberg Public Schools parent for 14 years. I'm looking forward to working with the district and community and bringing these promises to fruition. This anti-racism resolution is in alignment with our district and state's equity initiative. It is also in alignment to position statements and pledges released by the National Association of School Psychologists and the American School Counselor Association, amongst many others. It is of great concern to me that this vote was not a unanimous decision. Although I found the resolution was well worded, clear in its vision, and lacked political or inflammatory language and slogans, Board member Dave Brown opposed the resolution. The reasons for his objection, stating on July 9th, appeared to be that the resolution was to him overly political and polarizing, while ironically making a long personal position statement that was overly political and polarizing. I understand that some of the language has made Dave Brown uncomfortable. These hard conversations are not to invite comfort and maintain status quo, but to produce true lasting change. Dave Brown further cited his disagreement that the resolution outwardly assumes racism and systemic racist bias in this district and community that the standing policies don't already address. Yes, Mr. Brown, that is the entire point because it is true. If you can't see or even want to try to understand the systemic racism and implicit bias in schools and community, then you will be ineffective as a board member in solving these problems. You can't solve a problem you can't acknowledge exists. And you can't solve problems that you view as some political agenda that you're opposed to. This is why we're still having these issues even decades after the civil rights movement. David Jaimes, in his public comments, graciously invited every board member to have courageous conversations about anti-racism with a book study. I wholeheartedly agree and applaud his proposal. I also ask that the board to hold anti-racism training for all board members and district staff. I ask also, as one of his constituents, that Dave Brown educate himself on anti-racism and Black history, listen to Blacks and other people of color with an open heart and mind, and consider rescinding his no vote. At the moment, I will give board member Dave Brown the benefit of the doubt that once he truly understands what anti-racism means and why it is not enough to just be non-racist, then he will change his vote. The concept of anti-racism leaves the door open for change with each and every decision and action, and I hope and pray that he walks through it. Thank you for letting me talk.
Thank you very much, Stacy. Okay, we have Casey is next, and after Casey, we will have Cassandra.
Madam Chair, point of order. Are you going to enforce the rule against personal attacks on board members? It seems like a lot of these decisions or a lot of these discussions are directly personally addressing Director Brown, and that seems like it's outside the spirit of the guidance that you just read.
They are certainly, as we I think saw on Saturday, focused on Director Brown's action of the no vote. And as long as they remain focused on the action and not the person, I find that they're appropriate. Casey, are you ready?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
So to start off, my name's Casey Petrie. I'm the principal at Chehalem Valley Middle School. And like Stacy got, I asked to make public comments in response to the anti-racism resolution and the vote. So good evening. My name's Casey Petrie, and I'm the principal at Chehalem Valley Middle School. I'm white, I'm married, upper middle class woman, and a mother of 2 young boys. And I'm racist. And when I say this, I mean that I have spent my entire life in a culture that valued my whiteness and intentionally filtered out the history and the experiences of those who were different from me. As a result, I have absorbed racist ideas from birth in the same way that I have breathed oxygen. I'm on my own journey of exploring my privilege and racism with a goal of learning and doing better. And as a result, I'm anti-racist. I exist as both of these things. Believing that we are either or is dangerous. If I'm only racist, what power do I have to change the system? If I'm only anti-racist, what does that mean when I become aware of racist actions or decisions that I've made? In recent weeks, I've been following the events of the school board and the community surrounding the anti-racism resolution. I was pleased on June 23rd when the Newberg School Board members voted 5-1 in favor of this resolution. Like many, I was concerned that board member Dave Brown voted no. I wrote an email of concern to the school board acknowledging my support of the resolution, condemning racism, and asking for clarification from Dave Brown for his vote. Like many, I received a response from other members of the board, but Director Brown was silent. I was troubled by the potential implications of his vote, but I chose to wait. I wanted him to have a chance to state the reason for his vote and what he thought it meant for our community moving forward. In reading his statement from July 9th meeting, I was deeply concerned with his perspective on the resolution, on racism as a whole, but specifically on racism within the city of Newberg and the Newberg schools, and the ways in which we can move forward in support of Black members of our community. When I first saw the resolution, I, like Dave Brown, was concerned. It wasn't the content of or the systemic changes that it hinted that would need to take place. I was concerned that this resolution would be approved and we would all move on without any real change. I can thank Director Brown for ensuring that that won't happen. The conversations that have taken place since then have been uncomfortable but necessary. In reading through his statement, I was struck that his concern for a lack of action was used to justify his no vote. My own response has been to examine the power that I have within my school community and the school district to implement change. Our school board has power to set goals for our district, to ask questions that align with their priorities, and to provide focus for district and building leaders. Putting this resolution into action will require much harder work. Moving forward, I believe the members of this school board are in support of the difficult and personal work that will be necessary to implement change. I'm thankful that the resolution passed and that I get the opportunity to be a part of this work within the Newberg School District. My hope for Dave Brown and other members who may share his viewpoint more quietly is twofold. First, I hope that in the days, weeks, and months to come, that we are all able to listen with true willingness to hear and a willingness to learn from the experiences of those around us. Second, I hope that you're able to participate in the work of the school board and district leadership in implementing the resolution without standing in their way. To close, I speak now to the members of Chehalem Valley community and members of the Newberg School District community. Dave Brown doesn't speak for me on the issue of racism in our schools. I'm committed to work alongside my colleagues, my students, my families, the Newberg community as a whole, to address the ways in which our school system embodies systematic racism. And I'm committed to listening and truly hearing you, and I'm committed to doing better. Thank you.
Thank you, Casey. Thank you. Next we have Cassandra, and after Cassandra, we will have Gabe.
For those making public comment, if you are able to email me a written statement, I can make sure I accurately reflect your words in the minutes.
All right, can you hear me?
Great. Yes, we can. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
All right, my name is Cassandra Thonstad, and I'm the assistant principal at Mountain View Middle School, and I just be on this voice. So I am a white cisgender upper middle class woman. I am married with 3 sons who are currently enrolled in Newberg public schools, including 2 that attend Mountain View Middle School. Author Ibram Kendi defines racist as one who is supporting a racist policy through their actions or inaction or expressing a racist idea. I am a racist. I am privileged in ways that I never knew, like the Band-Aids at the store that are flesh tone match my skin, or that I have never been asked if I was here legally. And as I continue to learn, our school systems are racist with policies and practices that I've only begun to fight. My sons are privileged too. As students in the dual language program, they are often celebrated for learning a second language. White, blonde-haired, blue-eyed boys speaking Spanish. What a feat. At 12 and 10 years old, they can tell you that their native Spanish-speaking friends are expected to learn English. They can also tell you that students of color get in trouble disproportionately, that gang members in movies are almost always Black, and that racism is very real. I've been to board meetings, listened to our community respond, and I am saddened to watch us tear apart something that I've come to truly love. I have not only been employed by the Newberg School District for over a decade, but my husband and I made a conscious choice 8 years ago to uproot our family and make Newberg our home. This is where we live, play sports, play music, walk our dog, grocery shop, and where we choose to be. This is our home. When I taught at Newberg High School, one of my Latina students told me she couldn't take pre-calculus because only white students could pass that class. When I was an instructional coach at Mountain View, one of our Latina students told me that Hispanics didn't teach and used the staff at MVMS as proof that she was right. When I taught advanced math at CV, there were only 9 students of color in 2 full sections of algebra. As an assistant principal at Mountain View, 2 of our Black students have told me that staff regularly called them by the wrong name, the name of another Black student. Racism is very real, and our students are speaking up if we are willing to listen. As an assistant principal, a large part of my role is attendance and discipline. And for those that do not know, I was a high school math teacher specializing in statistics. So data and discipline inquiry are my passion. In the first semester of the 2018-19 school year, 39% of referrals went to Hispanic students and 58% went to white students. Those numbers represent a 12% overrepresentation for our Hispanic students and 7% underrepresentation for our white students. After 3 years of intentional conversations around discipline, about who was getting in trouble, who was not, and why, reviewing and refining our referral form, discipline procedures, and reentry process, our number for student referrals are close to matching the student population based on racial identity. First semester this year, 29% of the referrals went to Hispanic students and 64% went to white students. Those numbers are within 2% of the student population. How did we get there? We listened to students. We listened to their experiences when they struggle behaviorally and recognize that our system is perfectly aligned to get exactly the results we are getting. We may think, yeah.
I'm sorry to cut you off. You're at time. Could you just finish your final thoughts? Thank you. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. We may think we know what school is like, but until we are willing to sit and listen and truly hear what Newberg schools are teaching our students outside of academia, we are far from our goal of raising 21st century learners ready to embark into our world as prepared citizens. And while I am a racist, I'm also an anti-racist ready to do better because our students deserve that from each of us.
Great. Thank you very much for coming out tonight. Next we have Gabe, and after Gabe will be Meryl.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes, go ahead whenever you're ready.
To everyone in attendance, I want you to know that in my recounting of previous board meetings and in my recounting of American history, I will be using language that may be triggering or deemed offensive. If you do not wish to hear this, please lower your volume until I'm done speaking. First, Dave, the only part of your long response I found agreeable was your call to come together and listen to the community. However, to quote James Baldwin, I cannot believe what you say because I see what you do. It took only days for you to become quite vocal in the equity retreat, plodding along the same tired logic you espoused from your tardy and underwhelming response, despite the fact much of it was in direct opposition to what was said by many people of color whom you said we must listen to. The most concerning part of your response was the claim that America doesn't have racism in its DNA. You then brought up the Constitution, the document that gave rise to the 3/5 clause and was so racist that it needed 13 amendments to get around to abolishing slavery. You boasted that you hold this document to be your moral compass. I encourage you to re-examine your commitment to that document and find the moral philosophy that wasn't written by slave owners. That is just a metaphorical example of how racism is built into this nation's DNA. Literal truth is much more damning. In 2016, the Silver Nautilus Book Award for Psychology went to It Didn't Start With You, How Inherited Family Trauma Shapes Who We Are and How to End the Cycle by Professor Mark Wolin. This award-winning book, Wolin explains that it has been proven that trauma rewrites our DNA literally. For example, someone who almost drowns or a child who experienced the death of a parent who drowned may develop a fear of water and may experience anxiety attacks just by being on a boat or being close to an ocean. It's a survival response imprinted onto our genetic map that helps us continue to live. Because the genetic code is affected, it can be inherited, and when it is often accompanied with a stress response that pushes a person to their limits, leading to anxiety episodes, depression, hypertension, self-harm, or a multitude of other effects. That's how traumatic change is both effective in changing behavior and detrimental in allowing people to go on living normal lives. Now, as much as you like to ignore it, people who share our skin color owned, enslaved, and brutally traumatized people of color for multiple generations. Because of the systemic and purposeful actions of white Americans, many people of color do not know their heritage, but they do hold the terror that was forced upon their ancestors in their DNA. During the last board meeting, we heard from Newberg parents who said that their child of color who had planned to speak could not because they had an anxiety attack. I want to take the time now to express to you, Dave Brown and Brian Shannon, that it was your words and your lack of grace and tact that sent that child into a completely preventable episode. You took that information in completely unfazed. To this date, you have offered no public apology for the racial violence you inflicted upon a scholar in your district, but instead had the gall to ask if racism has ever gone unpunished in this community. Brian, your anger that seemed to rise up out of nowhere was disturbing. In front of children and community members, you invoked violent imagery from America's racist past to say that I accused Dave of being a Klan member. I did no such thing. I accused him of being a racist, a statement I stand by today. When you equate being racist with only those who participate in the most egregious forms of organized hatred and violence, you dismiss the vast majority of racists' reach. You dismiss the fathers and brothers who are locked up according to racist laws because of a racist justice system. You ignore the shopkeepers and employees who follow our black and brown brothers and sisters around stores, making them feel less than human. You set a standard of racism that is so high that it allows the vast majority of racism to flourish beneath it. Brian, through your actions and words, back emotional intelligence, empathy, and race, and speak about race without causing harm to people of color. And I do not believe you to be a competent force for good on the Newberg School Board. You both continue to show unwillingness to get on board with anti-racism resolution, yet you truly want to make positive change in your community. You could do so by simply stepping down from your position. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Gabe. I again want to make sure that everybody's comments are focused on the action and not the person. Next, we have Meryl, and after Meryl, we'll have Elise. Greg, is Meryl coming? Oh, someone's coming. There she is, magic of technology.
Can you hear me? Ah,
yes, we can hear you and see you.
There I am. Okay.
Okay, go ahead whenever you're ready.
All right. My name is Meryl Kunkel. Last Thursday, I spoke on the clear data showing disparity in discipline practices throughout our district. Tonight, I wanted to just reiterate my support of the resolution and support of your next steps. The unfortunate truth is that by almost every metric, the Newberg School District shows a need for this resolution and for further action. Disparity in disciplinary action, as well as in academic achievement per the 1819 ESSA report, as well as the narratives we've heard from the community members and students, provides the evidence for this. The policies we have in place are not working. The system is failing BIPOC community members and students, and it is disappointing to hear from board directors that they believe what we have in place is enough. I greatly support the creation of a ad hoc committee made up of people of color that might better inform the board on next steps, as well as DEI consultation and or training across the district so that policies and frameworks may be developed within an equity lens. I want my kids, I have 2 young kids. I want my kids to attend school in a district that understands the complexities of these issues and prioritizes equity in solutions and in curriculum development. Thank you all for supporting this resolution, and I look forward to hearing your next action steps. Thank you.
Thank you, Meryl. Okay, next we have Elise, and after Elise will be Ethan.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you and see you. Go ahead.
Okay. So, my name is Elise Yarnell Holloman, and I'm here to speak as a mom today in the community. In the community, I intend to send my son to public education. The decision to enroll my child in public education is one that up until recently was a no-brainer, as I come from a long line of public educators in my family. Today and in the future, I acknowledge my white privilege, that I have never had to think about if my child would be granted the same opportunities, graces, and support as his peers in school. As I've listened to the stories of community members, it has made me truly pause. Pause to consider where I, as a white woman, raising a white young boy, can do better and speak up for current students and families so that eventually Lincoln's peers do not have to do that with the same level of advocacy. Part of that is looking at institutions where I have involvement and discerning where I have a place to speak up in solidarity. I have often been in fear of saying the wrong thing or not saying something in the right way. But I would much rather have the opportunity as a public official or as a leader in my work to be called on the carpet for getting something wrong than not saying anything at all. In this time when anxiety, fear, and isolation is so present, I have no room for myself personally to sit in silence. I challenge those of you that think we are good enough right now. Every institution from healthcare to education has the opportunity to take this time to listen, acknowledge, and start passing the mic to the people of color in our community without defensiveness or reservation. In my leadership experience, when you say you believe in something as a core principle of your organization, you cannot repeat and reiterate them enough. We should be constantly looking for ways in every opportunity we have to seek out diversity, equity, inclusion, if we are truly looking to seek it as a core value. A parallel would be a core value of compassion. An organization does not do one training on compassion in one department, check the box, and call it good. The organization looks for ways in every corner of its entity to provide that compassion. We have to do the same in every corner of our systems with DEI. My current involvement with the Newberg School District actually started with speaking of my concern around mental health to this school board. And today, thanks to Luke Neff, really, we have a full-fledged wellness center at Newberg High School combined with community partners to provide services to our youth. I find this a similar time. Broken, I'm getting emotional. Broken hearts of our youth and families broken hearts of our families and people in denial of our systems. To not be in support reminds me of a similar response I got when pleading for the Newberg School Board to give sincere attention to the mental health of our youth and families. I hope we will continue in the spirit of growth and progression that our youth and families deserve. I full-heartedly support the Newberg School Board and anti-racism resolution, and it affirms my decision to eventually enroll my son as a student at Newberg School District.
Thank you, Elise. It's time. I'm sorry to have to end, but it sounded like that was your end. Thank you for coming and thank you for being brave. Next we have Ethan, and after Ethan we will have Catherine. Yeah, we can hear you, but there's some feedback. I can see you, but it looks like you're frozen.
Ethan, if you have a cell phone near or another kind of a radio near your microphone, maybe causing that feedback.
All right, is that any better?
No, that's still really bad feedback. I don't know. It's like a faulty.
Could I get bumped back and maybe phone in?
Yeah, no problem. Let's have Catherine come up, and then we'll check back in after Catherine. Okay.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so we'll have Catherine Olson up next, and then we'll circle back to Ethan.
Oh, you all get to see my lovely headshot. Uh-oh.
It was lovely. Welcome. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
Good evening. I so wish that I could be there in person so I could look each of you in the eye and say that I appreciate your work. Your work is not easy. And my name is Catherine Olson. I'm a Newberg alum and a current parent and volunteer of some Newberg elementary schoolers. So I believe that knowledge is power. So I want to share with you some of the history I've been learning about our beautiful state. And before I list some of those facts, I want to share some definitions with you. White supremacy, the belief that white people are superior to those of all other races and should therefore dominate society. Racism, prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism directed against a person or people on the basis of their racial or ethnic group. A few highlights from our state's history for your enjoyment. 1844, slavery is not legal in the territory of Oregon, but it is a crime for a Black person to live in the territory for more than 3 years. The punishment for this crime is 39 lashes every 6 months until they depart. Another one I'll pick, 1857, Oregon adopts a state constitution that bans Black people from coming into, residing in, or holding property in the state. In contrast, at that time, any white male settler could receive 650 acres of land, an additional 650 acres if he was married, score. 1866, the United States Congress passed the 14th Amendment, extending liberties and rights granted by the Bill of Rights to former slaves. Oregon does not ratify the 14th Amendment until 1973. Failing to recognize the rights of its Black citizens for over 100 years. From these facts, I learned many things, but in short, that our state was founded on racist beliefs that uphold white supremacy. So deeply held beliefs like these are passed on from generation to generation. They don't disappear. Sometimes they are passed on via written or spoken word, sometimes by example, sometimes such as the extensive history of the KKK presence in Oregon, and sometimes via silence. Now, from preschool through high school, I was educated in the Newberg public school system. I received hours of instruction about the Oregon Trail and related subjects on our state's history. Never once was I taught these parts of our history. This gap in my education undermines the Newberg School District's mission to educate all students to receive their full potential as knowledgeable, self-assured citizens. In support of upholding this mission statement and moving our district's anti-racism policy from intention to action, I offer the following 2 points. At every grade level, Newberg students should have honest historic education about the city of Newberg and the state of Oregon, including its racist past. As part of this curriculum, it will be imperative to make space for honest judgment-free discussion, and diversity and inclusion training for all school district employees at the very least.
Hey, Catherine, I'm sorry to interrupt, but your time, so if you could give us your final thoughts, that would be awesome.
Number 2, extend at least a portion of this historical awareness to all staff, students, parents, caregivers, volunteers that are connected to our schools, because this is not the work of just people of color. This is all of our work. Please know that I care about this community. I am dedicated, or else I wouldn't have moved back here with my family. And I believe that we have much to celebrate in our heritage. And while we do the work together in a nonpartisan effort, we can celebrate and make sure that this is a safe and equitable place for all people. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's check back in with Ethan, and after Ethan will be Monica.
Hang on a moment. I need to look up Ethan's phone number to figure out which one he is. Just a moment.
Sorry, I thought I could see you, Bob, but I didn't see the time things.
That's okay.
I think I have given Ethan the ability to speak. Ethan, can you?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yes, go ahead. Can
Awesome.
you, sorry, just a second. Can you see the signs that Bob's holding up on your device?
Negative.
Would it be better to have like auditory, you've got 1 minute left, or how would you like us to help with that?
I think I'll be under 3 minutes.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. Good evening. Ethan Headley here, a resident of Newberg. Thank you for the opportunity to address this board. I would like to start off by saying that my family and siblings have gone through Newberg School District in some capacity for over 2 decades. My youngest sister just graduated high school this year. I am myself a school district employee. I am invested in this community and care deeply about having positive development in my community. During this time period of growing up in Newberg, if the subject of the school district ever came up, more often than not, the conversation was negative. Newberg schools have been administered poorly for a long time and continue to keep that reputation. Currently, our world, our nation, and our community in Newberg is facing many great challenges. Most families are wondering what this upcoming school year will look like, including if their children will be in school and whether they will be safe. I have known board person Dave Brown for over 20 years. In that time, I have witnessed him year in and year out to continue to be the service of all people. Anyone this man could help in any way, he would. He has dedicated his entire life to serving people. I know with certainty that he has made a positive impact for thousands of kids over his career with Newberg schools. I was very happy with Dave getting elected to represent this school district because I knew that he truly wanted to help improve things. The quality of this man's character should not be slandered in the way that it has been, such as being elected to public office, though, I suppose. Newberg schools could only be so lucky to have a board comprised of people who are in the same caliber as Dave Brown. I will finish my comment by stating that my sister, who is Black, looked up to Mr. Brown during her experience at Newberg High School. She respected him because he respected her. He listened to her. He tried to understand her. That meant so much to her to know that there were people who cared about her in Newberg schools. And Dave Brown cares about Newberg schools more than anyone that I know. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ethan. Okay, next up we have Monica, and after Monica will be George.
Monica, are you there?
Yes, I just unmuted. Oh, and here's my video. There we go. It wouldn't unmute for a second. Hi.
Hi. All right, go ahead whenever you're ready.
Thank you. The resolution of the Newberg School Board of Directors condemning racism and committing to being an anti-racist school district has passed. So what I'm asking is that let's move forward and take action on what that means. I listened in on Saturday's meeting, and from that meeting, I have a few questions and comments. Oh, I forgot to say, I live here in Newberg. I had a child go through Newberg High School with friends who did experience racism. That's their story to tell, not mine. And I expect I will probably have future grandkids that go through this school system, so school district. So, okay, now back to it. I really, based on your resolution, I encourage you to commit to and move forward with the setting up of the focus groups with multicultural and Black, Indigenous people of color. I ask that the board listen very deeply to their voices, to their lived experiences, and please listen with open minds and open hearts in order to hear what they have lived and experienced so that their needs can be met with accountability and compassion and action, true action. And I'm wondering, will educational curriculum changes, training and information for staff, students, family, and even the community about anti-racism be addressed this year? Will it be incorporated and implemented this year? I know there are a lot of questions still just even about reopening, but again, I'm really interested in moving forward, taking action, going beyond words. I'm interested in knowing what specific actions will be taken in each school by grade level. Like, for example, will specific changes regarding what is taught about racism and history become more inclusive? Will curriculum in social studies, language arts, US history, Oregon history include a wider perspective of the lived human experience from multicultural and Black, Indigenous people of color? Will more comprehensive and accurate textbooks, guest speakers, movies, documentaries, and training that support these experiences and anti-racism be included? In my experience, when we include a broader multicultural perspective and the actual human experiential stories from throughout history presented by multicultural Black, Indigenous people of color, their sources themselves, then we support the development of compassion, empathy, intellectual knowledge. We foster respectful discussion and problem solving within ourselves, within our school community, and as well as in our larger community. Knowledge and compassion are two important tools for understanding what it means to be anti-racist and to value all human life. There was
Monica, sorry to interrupt. It's
okay.
time to give us your final thoughts. That would be great.
Okay, the rest will be there. I think that students and their families can really speak to what is not working, what is working, and what they need. And they need to be able to do that in a safe and supportive environment where they can learn and be heard. And I just thank you for your hard work. And may we all come together for our children, for our families, our teachers, staff, and community, because we belong. We all belong and we're equal. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. Next we have George, after George have Steve.
Hello?
Hi, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Okay, my name is George Sampson. I was a Newberg School District employee, 7 years as your assistant swim coach, 7 years as your head swimming coach at the high school level. And I would like to tell you, I was also an assistant coach for Dave Brown for 1 year on the tennis courts. And in my time, my wife works, she is the aquatics coordinator at the pool over in Newberg. So I am very familiar with the Newberg situations and the school board. Thank you all for doing a wonderful job over there. I know this is a non-paid job and you volunteer your time, and it is absolutely awesome that you are willing to do this. I would like to point out some basic things that I have fundamentally come to believe in life. There is only one race on this planet. We are all the human race. The content of the melanin in your skin makes absolutely no difference in the content of the character that you have. And as soon as you people can get your head around that, the better off you will be. I worked for Dave Brown. We had brown skin kids playing tennis. Absolutely no difference in treatment in what he did with the white kids. My best athlete as a swimmer in my coaching career was a young Black man. Phenomenal human being. His mother was the sweetest woman I have ever known. My best female athlete was an Asian girl. I don't care what color your skin is. It's who you are. So Go find out what your kids need and give it to them, because it is your power to do so. Color does not matter. Change the future. Don't dwell on the past. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Next, we have Steve, and after Steve, we'll have Brandon. And I'm just going to give a reminder again to please refrain from speaking personally about board members and focus on their actions. Thank you. All right, Steve.
Hello, my name is Steve Sherwood. I am a parent of two students who attended Newberg Public Schools from first grade through graduation, one graduating in 2019 and the second just recently in 2020. I would like to begin by thanking each of you that are board members for your volunteer work on behalf and for the thriving of our community's children. I would also like to thank the district staff that are in attendance for your service. As a parent of two children that attended Newberg Public Schools throughout their entire pre-college education, my family has benefited from your service. I would like to grant that the vast majority of employees of the district do not intend to behave in ways that are implicitly racist or prejudicial to any students in their care. None of us wants to believe that our behavior or participation in our community might be harmful to others, particularly children. That said, study after study confirms that Black, Brown, poor, and LGBT students have negative experiences and adverse personal and educational outcomes at disproportionately high rates compared to white, wealthier, straight peers. As Newberg is a typical American community, it is fair to say and believe that children in our community are not immune to those trends. I do not intend to argue statistics and abstractions in this comment. I would, however, like to note a handful of experiences that my children, their friends, and I have had both in the Newberg schools and in the Newberg community over the last 16 years. I recently asked my graduated daughters when they first heard the N-word spoken in school. For one, it was in grade school at Joanne Austin. For the other, it was in 6th grade at Mountain View. When I asked them how often they heard that word in school, they both said it would be impossible to count, somewhere around every week or most days of school from middle school on. Neither daughter had any recollection of a student receiving a reprimand or discipline for using this slur. Both daughters had Hispanic, Black, and LGBT friends in high school. All of these friends were subject to racial or sexual slurs from classmates. Hispanic friends asked if they were legal or told that Trump was going to send them back in spite of the fact that they had lived in Newberg their entire lives. Black friends called the N-word, LGBT friends suffering all sorts of crude sexual slurs. Again, neither daughter has any recollection of any school member or employee taking any action. Perhaps no school staff member was ever present or aware of these events, but they were so prevalent that it is hard to believe that racial and sexuality-based harassment were not part of the dominant culture of their experience in Newberg Public Schools. And it is the responsibility of the district's employees to create a culture that is safe and supportive for all students. Lack of awareness is not an acceptable excuse. When my family moved to Newberg in 2004, we were toured around town on 2 separate visits by different realtors. Each time we were told repeatedly that folks like you would probably be most satisfied with a home in X neighborhood, so your kids could go to Y elementary school and Z middle school. When we asked why, yes.
Sorry to interrupt you. You've hit your time. Could you go ahead and finish up your final thoughts for us?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm going to interrupt.
Yes. And sorry for hitting the limit there. In summary, I have taught at George Fox for 16 years and have repeatedly had Black and Hispanic students who have told me about racially charged experiences they have had in the community. Newberg is a good town. It's filled with good people. It's also filled with racism and things that are problematic, and it behooves the school district to act on behalf of all children, not just most. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Next, we have Brandon, and after Brandon, we will have Guadalupe.
I cannot find Brandon in our participant or our attendee list by either the phone number or the name. So Brandon, if you are there under a different name, please put that in the question and answer function. And I think we probably should move to the next one.
Okay, that's fine. And we can come back if he pops in. Okay, sorry about that. So short notice, but Guadalupe, and after Guadalupe, we will have David.
Can folks hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Go ahead, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. My name is Guadalupe Martinez. I'm the parent of an Newberg school district alum. I resided in Newberg for about 20 years, actually for exactly 20 years. I want to share with you an excerpt out of my son's teenage diary to emphasize what many of the children of the school district experience. Approximately 23% of the children the district serves, to be more precise, and not including multiracial children. This is from my son. And I kept this diary, or this excerpt out of the diary, because of its impact on not just my son, but me as his parent. When I was in the first grade, my teacher did not like me. I now figure, because I'm older, that it was because of the color of my skin. One day I was working on a worksheet, minding my own business, when the teacher tells me to be quiet. Puzzled, I replied to the teacher that I wasn't the one talking. Almost immediately, she snapped back at me and asked me to stop talking. I then told her again that it wasn't me talking. That day, a girl named X had sat next to me and said that I was not the one talking. She was white and blonde and blue-eyed. The teacher then said, okay, and went back to work. I just sat there like the conversation was over. The teacher did not even glance at me to say, I'm sorry. I found this odd, but since I did not notice because I was 6, I went back to work. Later in my life, I realized that this was what is now called racism. And I could go on. The whole excerpt out of the diary is very charged with emotion for me as a parent. My son became the young man that he is today because, much like myself, he had a parent who advocated 3- to 5-fold, and on numerous occasions fought for him not to be labeled because he was accused of being predatory, belligerent, disengaged, or subpar. In a nutshell, I had to fight for him not to be pushed out of school, figuratively or literally. I can tell you that the majority of the 23% of children in the school district who are like my son do not have the same luxury of having an incessant advocate. My son, out of high school, was accepted to Oregon State, Iowa State, Arizona, and has been an honor student at the community college that he attends, and will be attending Howard University as a mathematics major this fall. My son is not a victim, and yet he recognizes when he is in fact subjected to systemic racism. As a person of color, being told what I should feel, what racism is or isn't, is not just condescending. It is a neophyte statement, as pulling at the definition of racism out of the Webster's dictionary without context, analysis, or study. Racism is not the same as prejudice or bigotry. Racism is in fact a systemic issue that is created and perpetuated by individuals' actions. As you've asked yourself, Mr. Brown, part of the difficult conversation of understanding racism is hearing that, contrary to what others have said, your statement and action contribute to that systemic racism, that it is not born or exist in a vacuum.
I don't want to cut you off, but you've hit your time. Can you finish it up? Thank you.
I want to finish off by saying that finally, I'd like to remind you, Mr. Brown and board members, that in the US there have been 11, not 1, 11 civil rights acts since 1866. This doesn't include the 13th, 14th, or 15th Amendment, does not include any of the Voting Rights Acts, citing previous and NSD policies and regulations that presumably protect students of color from the systemic racism that occurs in our schools, in our community, does not mean that they have been effective in protecting my child, all of our kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming out tonight. Next we have David, and after David, we will have Judy. I'm sorry, Judy.
Hello, everybody.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, members of the board, thank you for taking my comment today. As you know, I have become a frequent commenter in these virtual meetings. I hope you don't start charging me for airtime. I want to thank you for having those hard conversations that needed to happen during your board retreat. While those conversations can be uncomfortable, they were very necessary. However, I believe that it's time for the board to move forward. We need to continue the anti-racist work that was started when the anti-racist resolution was passed. I believe that teachers and students will come into our schools in person or online ready to teach and or learn about race and racial history. When I was a teacher, I always felt like I taught about race and racial history with one arm tied behind my back. I did not know where the reprimand would come from. Would it be a parent, my admin, or other teachers? I did not want this to be the case for students or teachers. I have been looking over the current policies and I came across policy IGAC, teaching about religion, which states, the public schools are obligated to maintain neutrality in matters of religion. Religion influences many areas of education, such as literature and history, and religion's role in civilization can and should be properly taught. It is proper to teach about religion and not teach sectarian beliefs. Teachers may expose students to information concerning religion and religious beliefs, but shall not advocate openly or covertly or by subtlety a particular religion or religious beliefs. In the spirit of tolerance, students and staff may be excused from participating in practices that are contrary to the religious beliefs without penalty and policy. While I appreciate this policy because I am Christian, I applaud the Newberg School District for having it. I believe that if we have similar policy to this, I would feel supported by my district to teach about race. A policy could read something like this. Teaching about racial history. The public schools are obligated to maintain neutrality in matters of race. Racial history influences many areas of education, such as literature, math, and science, and race's role in civilization can and should be properly taught. It is proper to teach about racial history and not teach a sanitized version of U.S. history. Teachers may expose students to information concerning race and racial history, but shall not advocate for openly or covertly or by subtlety a particular race. In the spirit of tolerance, students and staff may be excused from participating in practices that are contrary to their beliefs without penalty. End of policy. I left the last line in because I don't want people to feel like they have to attend racial affinity groups, or if parents do not want their students to learn about slavery on that day, that they can also have them not participate. The law that we could base this policy on would be 336.057, courses in Constitution and History of the United States, as well as 336.067, topics giving special emphasis in instruction, which states that in public schools, special emphasis should be given to instruction in A, and then B, which would be respect for all human, regardless of race, color, creed, national origin, religion, age, sex, and disability. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, David. Okay, next we have Judy, and after Judy, we will have John.
Judy, is that the correct account, the brown account for you there? You're on mute and no video if you can hear us.
Judy, if you're there, can you, there you go.
I'm here.
Okay. Are you ready?
Yeah, I have a statement. I'm sorry that you can't see me, but I can see you. So here's my statement. I'm Judy Brown. I'm a teacher. I've been a teacher for over 30 years. I live in the community. Currently, I teach at Mountain View Middle School. And yes, Cassandra Thonsted is my vice principal. Let me state a few facts. What strikes me in these conversations is the passion. We, the teachers, administrators, community members, I just had somebody left a big giant bouquet of flowers at my door. That's not in what I wanted to say, but people are stopping by. People care. We are doing our best to educate all kids, all children that come to us. What I want to focus on tonight is the we. We are the we. We need your support, board members. We need curriculum. Yes, curriculum. I haven't had health curriculum since I taught it. We need curriculum for each subject. We need things that are going to help our students. We need hands-on materials. We also will probably need a little bit of safety equipment when we walk into the classroom in September. The we should include all of us in this meeting tonight. There might even be students listening to us tonight, and they should be part of the we. We are all educators. We are all here to work together to help our students be the very best that they can be. There can't be a but, though. There can't be a but in this speech tonight. I challenge all of us in this Zoom meeting tonight. Yes, every single one of you, and I would name each one of you off, but I won't. But I can, because I can see your faces. I challenge all of us to accept others in this room as part of the we. Lip service will not do. I've seen it the last 15 years that I've worked in this district. That is why I am passionate about education, even after my 31st year of teaching, 35 years of coaching in public schools. Yes, I am old, but I believe we can do it. If we really want to make a difference, we really want to build a better community, if we really want to inspire others, if we really want the respect that is part of positive working relationships, then we have to start by being part of the we. Without the we, it's us and them. This is Newberg, the we. We've seen how the us and them plays out in their communities in many years. I want to be part of the we, and I want to be part so that we can educate every student at the highest level. As I conclude tonight, I am very, very thankful for everyone's opinion, everyone's education, and most importantly, I am very thankful that I have a chance to teach every school year, and I hope to be back in the classroom in September. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. Okay, next we have John, and after John, hopefully we can connect with Brandon. John, can you hear us? Let's give him a minute and see if it connects.
Can you hear me?
Yes, there you go.
Okay, I seem to have gotten disconnected there.
That's okay, you're back. Go ahead and start whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Good evening, and I have a question, but I just want to open after just listening to the comments. I just want to say thank you to each of you for your service to the district. gosh, when you started the school year last year, who thought you'd be dealing with these two huge rocks that just seem to have come out of nowhere? The rock of health issues that are actually have life and death implications, and then the whole matter of, you know, cultural behavior, cultural change, transition. I mean, these are huge things. And so again, obviously there's differing views on this, and I'm not here to express my view. I want to thank you for tackling these issues and for your service to the district. By the way, I'm John Witherspoon. I'm the grandparent of a Mabel Rush student. I don't know if you can see him here, and he lives with us. And so my questions have to do with facilities. Is there a new plan for putting the bond on the ballot in November? And then my second question is, has there been any thoughts in changing the project list or the priorities to address facility issues related to the COVID?
John, unfortunately, we can't, since it's public comment time, we can't engage in a back and forth conversation, but I will definitely follow up with you via email along with all the other people who have made comments. And the bond conversation may be a part of our new business later on. So if you're able, I would encourage you to stay on for the rest of the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, and do we have Brandon? Is he back or here?
I did not receive a message, and I do not see a phone number or name that matches what he sent in.
Yeah, neither do I. Okay, well, I will follow up with Brandon as well and encourage him to hopefully attend next meeting that we have. Okay, thank you to everyone who gave comments tonight. I know it can be emotional and it can be a little bit difficult in this format and venue as well. So we all appreciate hearing from our constituents, even in these difficult times of technology specifically. Okay, back to our agenda. Next up, we have a consent agenda. Are there any questions or discussions around that? We did have a donation of $300 from the Newberg Booster Club for the faculty appreciation.
I move that the board approve the consent agenda as presented.
I second.
Okay, with a motion and a second, is there discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye.
Aye.
And passes unanimously. Okay, let's move into board comments. Do any of the members of the board have comments this evening?
Chair Penner, I just would like to share that you will get a report later about the upcoming plan, where we stand now. This year, as far as reopening for the school year and what this school year will look like with the COVID impact, you know, this year is going to be a very different experience for all of our students, teachers, and staff. You know, my girls are going into 6th grade and 8th grade. And, you know, they're kind of apprehensive about what their school year is going to look like. And there are a lot of questions that I can't answer for them. There's a lot of things that we don't know about what this year is going to look like. But one thing that I'm confident in and very pleased with is that we have folks from our teachers to our maintenance staff to our administrators who are working diligently to make sure that everything can be done, that everything will be done that can be done to prepare for giving kids a quality education in a safe environment. And those are the two key things that I want folks to remember, is that we are going to do everything possible to provide a quality education in a safe environment. What that looks like is going to evolve and change, but all of our kids are going to get that work brought to them by the folks who are over hundreds of folks in the district who are working on providing that for them. And I just, I find that reassuring as a board member, and I find that reassuring as a parent.
Okay. Any other comments? Oh, go
I
ahead,
have
Eden.
one. I just want to again thank all the attendees. I think at one point we had 84 attending our meeting today, and I think that's one of the positive things of now doing our meetings this way, that a lot more people are able to attend. And if we move forward on posting these on YouTube, I know a lot more will have access to our meetings. So I'm really appreciative of everybody taking the time to show up. I've felt the support from the community, especially during these times where we're having these uncomfortable conversations. And I really appreciate everyone that has reached out to me or has been there to want to listen. So hang in there. We're gonna get through this. We're not gonna stop this. We're gonna take action.
Any other board comments?
Yeah, Brandy, I do.
Go ahead, Dave.
I just like to say, you know, as people call in and, you know, I listen to what each and every one of your comments are. That's the way I've always operated. I stated many times over in my statement that my no vote had nothing to do with the fact that I don't think, tolerate, condone, or accept any type of racism. When we get going on this whole subject here, I stated very clearly in there that I will stand with anybody against racism. I always have. There are other issues with that statement that I did not agree with, but it had nothing to do with the fact that I don't think racism exists or that I've never fought it hard my entire life. So for those who have been very blunt in your statements towards me, and you can rest assured that I have spent my entire career fighting racism. This no vote was in no way how I feel about protecting people of color. I have told you guys over and over that I don't want to talk about color. I want to talk about people. And I want to help every single person. And the fact that I can vote no is the fact that we live in a country with freedom in this United States. And yet, I have had a lot of people come and contact me in a supportive way. We've gotten so caught up in something like this that we're losing track of what we're going to do in the fall for our kids and what we're going to do to move forward through this coronavirus and how school's going to look. We have to find a way to get these kids back in an educational mode that's going to be the best for them. I agree with Bob Woodruff that the school board will do everything we can to try to make that happen. I don't think we really know yet. We don't know where this is still going to go. But I want to make it very clear to everybody out there. My character has been attacked very hard for something I fought my whole life not to have. So don't take my no vote on this as a fact that I condone in any way, shape, or form racism, because I do not. And for the three principals who called in and have your statements, I would come to your school, and I have, and helped out many, many times with any type of situation that come up, whether it's volunteer work, working there professionally, or coaching. And I have never treated anybody any different because of the color of their skin, and I never will. So I would like everybody to hear that I do not condone racism. Thank you for everybody that takes the time to call in. Appreciate you very much.
Okay. Any other board comments? I have a really quick one here. Yesterday, I had the pleasure of meeting up with Shiloh, who was on the call, but I'm not sure, he may have had to drop off. We had a really great meeting, and I learned more about the nutrition program in general and how it's been adapted to meet our community's needs during this global pandemic. And in chatting with him, I'm really excited to see where he and his team continue to grow and evolve the VITAL program in the coming years. I think he's got some really amazing ideas and people behind him to help make it happen. So that's going to be a fun one to watch, I think. And I also want to again acknowledge the pain and suffering that our students and families are experiencing right now in our community. Please know that our thoughts are with you, and we hope for a speedy recovery for everyone. Please, everyone, stay safe and healthy. And lastly, I just want to thank everybody who's here with us tonight. In the last few weeks, our community has shown up, they've communicated with the board, and people are engaged. And I want to thank everyone who's taking time to help us as we continue this fundamental work to make our school district a always better and ever-growing place. All right, that moves on to our superintendent comments. Joe, are you ready?
I'm ready, and I'm even unmuted. I should get some points for that. Got it right that time. Thank you, Brandy. So as we begin the next chapter for Newberg and Dundee school children and their families, I want to express my deepest gratitude to each person who has contributed so far to the success of our district. We've learned so much from the last several months as we navigated the ever-changing environment around us and engaged in a schooling experience like none of us have ever attempted. I know that while we were not perfect in our execution of the distance learning for the whole process we had to the end of the 2019 and 2020 school year, we did have some amazing bright spots, and we should celebrate some of those successes. As you just mentioned before, Brandy, we were able to spin up 16 sites plus delivery of critical food supplies to children throughout the district's boundaries, serving just for that time period where we would have been in school more than 130,000 meals, which is an incredible feat. We were able to distribute technology and hotspot connectivity to students across grade levels and create staff teams to develop and deliver content and learning to students everywhere. We continue to navigate the on again and off again of possibly returning to school while still maintaining some modicum of sanity to get us through to the end of the school year. I cannot thank enough all the support staff, the teachers, administrators, for the incredibly hard work they put in to make sure students and families were connected to school and could get the support they needed. We converted an entire system from a fully in-person daily contact model to a completely remote weekly contact process. I want to acknowledge one more time how grateful I am to the staff of Newberg Public Schools for their efforts in teaching, connecting, cleaning, feeding, and supporting things for our students and families and each other during our coronavirus spring. Looking ahead, we have an even greater opportunity to learn and grow as a community. Tonight, we will talk about our current plans for providing educational services to students, but I want to be clear, this is today, and tomorrow things can change, and possibly radically. I will ask each of you for patience and grace as we navigate these newly changing waters. I know that there are many differing opinions about opening school or not opening school, masks or no masks, in person or distance only, or something in between. We are working in teams that include more than 60 professional educators and support staff in our district, trying to create the best possible scenarios for all students. We are talking about curriculum, training and professional development, equity and inclusion, the student experience, and above all other things, student and staff safety. In recent weeks, we've also had robust conversations about dedicating ourselves to being an anti-racist school district. I would like to address a couple of misconceptions about what that means and some of the opportunities we have ahead of us. At the June 23rd, 2020 board meeting, the school board passed a resolution condemning racism and committing to being an anti-racist school district. While it was a nearly unanimous vote, we did have a member voted against it at that time. Since then, many emails, Facebook posts, op-ed articles, and phone calls have been swirling around, and I know from the tenor of many of them that we've stopped listening to each other. Some people expressed that they believed the resolution was calling everyone who is white a racist in Newberg. It expressly does not. It does acknowledge that the board and the district recognize that hatred and bigotry and white supremacy exist and that we must stand up to and speak out against it. Some folks argue that it was a political statement in support of a national organization instead of talking about what we really need right here locally. And I would say that the resolution states that we know people of color experience the world differently than those of us who are white, including myself, experience it. The resolution asks us to review our curriculum to look for bias and racist language and to be delivered in a way that understands where students come from and how they live each and every day. It asks us to recruit and retain more staff who better represent the 20% of our student and family community who are represented only at the 4% level currently. It asks us to make sure that we are learning to understand more about each other so that our disparities in discipline incidents and academic achievements are eliminated. We as a school community may not even agree at this time what the root causes are, or what the problems are, or the motivations of others as they speak their truth. Yet we all have the same end goal in mind: to provide the most incredible, loving, supportive, deeply motivating educational experience for each and every one of our students. We all want Newberg High School graduates to be proud to wear the blue and gold while they're, not just while they're in school, but in the many years that come afterwards. We want all students to be great readers, great deliberators, and great citizens of the world. We want to encourage inventors, artists, innovators, and heck, even future school staff members if they're crazy enough to join us. We want every student to feel like they belong, like they are seen, and that they matter. So as we look forward and lean into the work of this coming year and the decades before us, I am asking each of you here in this, for here later, to spend time really listening to people with whom you may not agree. Try to understand their truth, assume good intentions, and learn from their lived experiences. None of this will be easy. You will hear things you don't like and may make you even uncomfortable. I implore you not to shut down, not to walk away, not to throw up your hands and believe that they are impossibly wrong. The conversations we will have about schooling, about race, equity, inclusion, curriculum, staffing, budgeting, and possibly bonds will require us to spend time listening to others and looking for common ground for the common good. We had common ground before June 23rd, and we still have the same common ground now. We're working with young humans who will be the future caretakers of the world. Know that I may not live to see the fruit of their toil and struggle, but I am content in knowing that I and every one of the members of our board, staff, and community will have had a small but important part in building the bridge to that brighter future. The road ahead will be bumpy, and at times we may need to get out and change a tire, but our goal will always be in our windshield. It is important to remember that this truly is a journey and not a final destination. We will never be done with this work. I'm ever hopeful that we will continue to work together, even when we disagree, to enable that future for every Newberg and Dundee student. I want to thank everyone who shared their thoughts tonight, and I want to thank you all for the opportunity for letting me speak to you as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe.
Excuse me, will there be a copy of that available to us? Yeah, a transcript or whatever?
Yes, there will. I'll send that out later on as well for everyone.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Does anybody need a 5 or 10 minute break at this point, or would the board like to continue on to new business? Who's doing okay? Oh, Joe says 5 minutes. Rebecca says 5 minutes.
You guys are, if you're,
I would like
yeah.
a 5 minute.
Okay, let's do that. Let's come back at 8:35. All right. Bob and Brian. There's Bob, Brian. There's Brian. Great. I think we are all back. Okay. Next point of business is under new business. We'll be hearing from Nikki regarding the designate signatories for each building. Go ahead, Nikki.
Okay, this is just standard each year where we renew information on our signers and all of our bank accounts. We do need to change one on there. The only one that is highlighted, Cynthia Wall, she was highlighted to be removed and she shouldn't be. So we need to keep her on there. I am not sure how that happened, but that would be a correction to this document.
Okay. Are there any questions for Nikki? No, I would entertain a motion.
I move that the Newberg School District Board of Directors approve and designate the depository signatures fiscal year 2021 as presented, keeping Cynthia Wall as one of the designees.
I second it.
Okay, with a motion and a second, is there further discussion? All right, all those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 And it passes unanimously. Thank you, Nikki. Okay, next we have Dr. Morlock to give us an update on school reopening plans this fall. Go ahead.
All right, thank you. What's that? Yeah, I even reached up to do unmute two in a row tonight. Well, so thank you very much. I look forward to discussing a little bit with you tonight. I actually have several folks on our team who are going to be discussing some more of the specifics, and we'll also get into some timeline pieces about when we'll see some of the blueprints that we'll post online for everybody to review and to also take comment on. So we'll get to those in a moment. So the process that we're going through, as I said, actually in my comments just prior to that, I want to make sure that everybody understands that although we are schools and we do all the rest of these things, our number one concern is health and safety of our students and our staff. And so, you know, we are taking very seriously all of the precautions, all the things necessary, and even still things can happen. And so we're working very hard to put together our very best plans. And then we're watching the numbers and the changes and things like that. So we have still lots of runway to go. The Department of Education will give another update to this. This is version 1.0 of their blueprint. The next version will come out on July 28th. And then there will be a follow-up on August 11th. And my team can correct me if I've gotten those dates wrong, but I believe those are correct. So we still have a ways to go. As I said before, we have dozens and dozens of educators who have been working on teams, reviewing the plans, looking at them, you know, looking at square footage, trying to figure out exactly how many folks we can fit in, what model will work. We have already surveyed staff, we've surveyed families, and you know, all of those things as we put them in together. It's creating a very challenging situation, and we're coming up, I think, with as good a plan as we can do given the circumstances, as we can create given the circumstances. So health and safety is number one. The Department of Ed will tell you that equity of opportunity is the core thing that connects the instruction, family and community engagement, mental and social emotional health, and the staffing and personnel, and how all of those work together. Our blueprints are also required to include all of the public health protocols, what our facilities and how our school operations will go through, and then a response to any outbreak that may occur. So there is a lot in these plans. Again, they will be posted later on for the public to review and staff to go through as well. But I thought we would now kind of go into each one of those areas. And so I've got our lineup tonight. We'll start with Derek, and then Karen, and then Luke, and then Ann and Shiloh. So we'll go through each one of those, and then at the end, if we have questions, then of course we'd like to answer your questions. We know there are lots of questions out there, maybe things you've heard from your constituents. We want to try to get as many of those answers out there. I will also tell you that there will be some things we don't have answers to yet, and there are still things that are being worked on. So I want to be clear about that. We may not have all of your answers tonight, but we are working diligently to get those out the door. So Without further ado, I am going to move to Derek. Derek, are you ready?
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Brown. Take it away.
All right. Chair Penner and members of the board, thank you very much for the time tonight. I just wanted to give you a little bit of an update on the process that we've been using to fill out the school reopening blueprints, we're calling them. A little over a month ago, we received guidance from the Oregon Department of Education on how to build our plans that are descriptions and explanations of the protocols we'll use to be able to safely reopen our schools in the fall. As part of and I believe Dr. Mark has about this before, we were also given a bit of a look behind the curtain prior to the document being released when ODE asked us if we would be willing to have one of our schools go through the process of completing a blueprint that they would then be able to use as an example when they released it more broadly to the rest of the state. So Casey Petrie, the principal over at Chehalem Valley, and a small group of people, including some district level administrators, worked together with staff at ODE to go through the blueprint and complete that process. And so we learned a little bit about it before the rest of our schools went through it. While we've been going through that process, we've also been connecting with ODE, attending webinars, doing other things to gain as much information about the kinds of information we need to be thinking about as we complete these blueprints. The blueprints are largely have to do with the public health safety issues associated with reopening schools. There are components of the blueprints that do talk about the actual instructional model and teaching and learning components of reopening schools, but largely are focused on how you're going to keep staff and how you're going to keep students safe given the current health issues around COVID-19. So each of our principals created a design team, which is made up of licensed staff, classified staff, administrators, and in some cases, some of those staff members might also be parents, so maybe wearing a couple of different hats to try to collect ideas and be able to put their best thinking forward in the blueprints. So we've had a lot of opportunities to gain feedback so far from folks that work within the building. In addition, we put out a parent survey that helped inform our thinking and got some good information from that as it pertains to coming up with a good design for how to reopen schools. We are, the blueprints are, I want to say, completed. At least the first draft of them are completed. We have a meeting tomorrow with our building principals to go through those blueprints one more time and answer any final questions that they might have about them. And then we have a plan for working with both of our unions to give them an opportunity to take a look at those and ask questions and go back and forth as necessary to iron out any details. I believe our plan is for sometime next week to actually post the blueprints, which again, it's one blueprint per school on our website so that the community at large can take a look at what our thinking is around public health and our teaching and learning component with the school reopening. And then we will be required to submit those also to county health authorities and then ultimately to ODE. And I think the final deadline for getting them to ODE is August 15th. So we've been thinking about how to get them there earlier than that. The plans, the blueprints, will be reviewed both by ODE and by OHA. So both of those entities will put their eyes on them and need to approve them. So again, given that we've been kind of walking alongside ODE and collecting guidance from them as we've been going, we believe that we've put forth some good thinking there. I do want to point out, of course, there are many moving parts around just the public health component of this. So how are you getting kids to school? How are kids moving around within schools? How are teachers moving around within schools? How are you ensuring that if somebody is symptomatic, that you've got a good process in place to remove them and find out anybody else that they've been in contact with? and the list goes on and on. So those are the kinds of things that are described in our plan. The teaching and learning component, or the instructional model that we are currently moving forward with, is one that is common in terms of what other districts are trying to do, that we call a hybrid model. So the hybrid model means that a portion of a student's experience with their school is in person, and another portion of it is in an online kind of environment, based largely on what OHA has told us in terms of kind of the square footage requirements. There's really no way for us to bring all of our students together in person at one time. So each of our principals and our facilities folks have put their heads together to figure out how many students could we have in these respective spaces and meet the square footage guidelines in order to maintain proper social distancing. And of course, in addition to that, other personal protective equipment and things like that. So the hybrid model would allow us to potentially be able to do that, where a student might come to school on a Monday and a Wednesday, and on a Tuesday and a Thursday be experiencing school in some kind of online fashion, and then another cohort of students that would be coming to school on Tuesday and Thursday, so flipped. We know that we do have, and I believe Anne will probably talk to this with a little bit more detail, we have some students with unique learning needs, and we need to think about how they may receive additional supports, which might mean potentially coming into in-person small group settings a little bit more often. There are lots and lots of unanswered questions about how we do that and ensure everyone's safety at this point, but we know that we have some learners that need additional supports, and we have to be more flexible and willing to think outside the box about how we do that while ensuring everyone's safety. So we are planning to, again, make the blueprints available publicly next week. And then I believe the following week on the 28th, Dr. Morlock can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we will come back to you again that evening to walk you through the blueprints and maybe say a little bit more, give you a little bit more detailed information about both the instructional model and the health and safety protocols that are described within them. And then move forward from there. As Dr. Morlock said, we are in constant communication with ODE, and I know that they are in constant communication with OHA and county health authorities. So we are very strongly influenced by the guidance that we get from those entities about how to do this work. And at the same time, we know that we want to keep staff and students safe and give them a rich, meaningful learning experience while doing that under very unique circumstances.
Okay, would it be helpful to have all staff speak, or would it be better, do you think, as from a board perspective, to be able to question each individual staff member?
It may make more sense to get through each one of these first, because the questions may get answered depending upon who's talking about it.
Sure. So take note, everybody. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Derek. We're going to, Karen will also update working with area schools. Karen, please.
All right, great. Thanks for having us. It is a really rich and active time in the central office. So we're doing a lot of work to support the blueprints. And my job over the last several weeks has been working with schools, middle schools and high school on their blueprints, but also, digging into not just the details in the blueprints themselves, but just the questions that we need to ask before we can actually design something that's going to work as well as we can hope for our students and our staff. And like everything else, as Derek said, this is really about safety first. And so a lot of the work has been around safety protocols, making sure that we are following the Oregon Department of Education guidance and the Oregon Health Authority guidance. And so there's been mostly design teamwork. I will say that I've been really pleased with the collaboration that's happened in grades 6 through 12. And the middle schools have been collaborating extensively on the blueprints and aligning their practice across middle schools. And that's been lovely to see. So in terms of my work with that, I'm just there to support the administrators as they do that important work. I've also had the opportunity to attend several WESD, which is our educational service district, breakout sessions on really specific aspects of the blueprints. And so I will say that I've really appreciated the collaboration in our county, in our region, that we can share information and learn from one another. And so it's not, I want you guys to know that we are reaching out to other school districts. We're collaborating with other school districts. We're sharing practices, and that's informing the work that we're doing here in Newberg as well. At my last meeting, where we were talking with a whole group of administrators from across our county, I shared some information about what we were thinking about, and we had really robust conversation about that, and they really appreciated some of the ideas that Newberg was generating. So that was great information in terms of feedback for me to bring back. You know, I think that also the focus, I think it's very important that we transcend the safety protocols. Those are the baselines, but we really need to dig into the instructional practices and looking through the blueprints through the lens of equity. And Derek mentioned many of those aspects, which is we have students who might need something different than another student based on all kinds of issues in their learning. And we have to make sure that we design something appropriate. In terms of the high school complexity, I think I spent the most time at the high school recently. In the last 3 weeks, I've gone to, I believe, 3 different work sessions. And those work sessions were all about the blueprint, but also about what could a schedule look like in a hybrid model for 1,500 kids. And we have a facility, and we have limitations and constraints with that facility. We have constraints with staffing. We have multiple entrances and exits. We have a lot of work to do around making sure that the safety protocols are really in place. And something called cohorting is something I've been working at with both middle school and high school administrators. How do we create safe cohorts that we can actually contact trace, so we can actually make sure we understand if there is a COVID incident in a school, we know exactly who came in contact with that student or staff member, and making sure that we are doing our very best to create stable cohorts that will actually fit within the classroom requirements. And so, you know, so to simplify it, we're trying to make sure that we're not just doing the minimum for this, that we want to make sure that we're doing the best possible design so that students are safe and staff members are safe as you go through this. So we're still working on the high school component, by the way, because it's very complex. And so I have another meeting in the next couple of days to touch base again. In terms of design, we've just begun the practices of getting together to focus on what is professional learning going to look like in the fall, in a hybrid model, in an online component. What would that look like, and how are we going to be able to support our teachers as they do the design work that they need for instruction? How are we going to support them in an instructional way? How are we going to support the professional learning? Because in the spring, it was a sprint, and we want to make sure in the fall that we are not sprinting. We are actually taking our time before school starts to be able to put some things in place to make sure that we're successful for the instructional goals that we have as a district and the instructional capacity of the teachers in our buildings. So that's the work that's going on right now. Across K-12, that's just a snapshot of secondary.
Great, thank you, Karen. Mm-hmm. We're going to move to Luke. Dr. Neff.
Thank you, Dr. Morlock. I don't have a whole lot to add to what Derek and Karen shared. And I'll be speaking mainly from my perspective as the head of the technology department. I do want to emphasize what Derek shared, that we are given the choice in the blueprint between really 2 things, either hybrid or fully online. And we want to get as many kids as possible back in the building. So we chose hybrid, and most of that document is focused on health and safety concerns and trying to do everything we can to keep kids safe. And staff safe. One of the questions that I can see came up from someone in the attendees is, what's the cohort model? So one of the strategies in there is that we're going to keep kids in these stable groups, small groups, so that we know and can trace who is with whom, and we can follow up on that if there is an outbreak. And so we want to minimize the number of cohorts that our students are in to try to keep them safe when they're in our buildings. Hopefully that explained that adequately for you. The hybrid model is what we are planning for. And we also need to be preparing for the other option, which is online, should it come to that. We don't know what the fall will bring. So from the tech department perspective, these are two very different realities. We know that the hybrid model will still do plenty of online learning. If we do go fully online, that looks a little bit different. And so we're trying to plan for both of those in the case that we do have to switch to online learning at some point. To prepare for that, we've been reading parent surveys, trying to make sure that everyone has the technology, the devices they need, and also that our platforms, our digital systems are adequate. On that note, we used some tools in the spring that worked well. We used Seesaw and Google Classroom, and we're trying to examine those carefully to make sure that we are using the best tools and trying to consolidate and streamline how many different systems and tools families have to navigate. We know there's a lot, and different tools do different things, and we're trying to take some time to be thoughtful and strategic about which of those tools we're going to use as we move forward into the fall. Device-wise, we do have Chromebooks for our online learning component, and we had an adequate number for the spring. We are a little bit worried about the fall. We don't know how many of those devices have disappeared. We've let them stay with our families. We want families to still have access to those through the summer. And we hope they're being used. We hope that students are learning through them still. And we will know, late August, early September, kind of what the situation in terms of how many devices we need. We are hoping to be able to purchase some more this summer to make sure that we're adequately prepared for that. And I believe a bond may be helpful on that front. And that may be something we discuss as part of the bond conversation. I think that's mainly it for me. There's a very small section in the operational blueprint about technology, kind of lays out what you already know. We have Chromebooks for students who need them. We have some online platforms we use. If we're doing hybrid learning, our students will need to bring their Chromebook from home to school and back and forth if they're going to have it at school. We don't have enough devices for them to have one at home and at school. So we will need to make some choices there. Is that something where we can have school time be more focused on interpersonal interactions and some things like that that use less screen time, knowing that they're getting a lot of screen time away from school? And so with the principal group and with other educators, we're going to continue to think through the best way forward on that. I think that's all on the technology front.
Great, thanks, Luke. Ann Zeal, our Director of Special Programs.
Uh-oh, Anne, we can't hear you.
Her video is frozen on my end, at least, as well.
Okay.
The video is working, but I can't hear. We can't hear.
So, Ann, I'm going to move to Shiloh and let you maybe just reset that one. All right, if you can hear us. Okay.
And try
All right,
leaving and returning again and see if that works.
All right. So Shiloh, we're gonna move to you quickly. So thanks for, and then we'll come back to Ann. I think she'll reset over there.
All right. So just kind of an update for our department. We're in the middle of our summer food program, which is going really great right now. 9 sites. We were able to expand to 3 new areas that we have not served in the past due to some state and federal waivers to go outside of our census data for eligibility and income areas, low income areas. So we're serving about double of what we normally summer. So it's very encouraging that we're reaching out to families. Also grouping up with St. Peter's Northwest Christian Church about handing out food boxes, letting them use the high school and they've been distributing, I think this week it went up to 700 boxes both of the churches are distributing between both of them. And how my part's been kind of fitting into planning for next year is being on the different committees, and when we're having our admin meetings, it's kind of listening and absorbing all the different ideas of a hybrid model or distance learning, and how we're going to adapt our nutrition program to it. Right now, the USDA and the state have some really good waivers out there. We're studying for some flexibilities to make it easier to serve kids next year. One that we're really pushing for is that all kids eat for free. That's one big bill that the USDA has been hit a lot on, just with the uncertainty of next year of how that would really help families out. And then I'm a part of ODE task force. I'm one of the 12 directors of the. We get together with co-directors and we kind of brainstorm what our challenges are, what different, because labor and not running a regular cafeteria service, it definitely has it's a game changer for us, as it is everybody. So it's been some really good teamwork about coming up with some great solutions on how we get kids fed through the day and get a good rotation system, and making sure if we do a hybrid where kids are in person one day and then at home doing distance one day, at least we are thinking about how we're feeding those kids when they're not at school. And we've came up with some pretty good ideas. So, Joe, am I missing anything?
No, I think that's good. And we'll talk a little bit more about food service and some of those complicating factors as we get into the blueprints. I think that's one area that we will adjust in order to make sure it fits the overall plan. So, Anne, are we able to hear you now?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yay. Sorry
All
about
right.
that.
That's okay.
So the last month we've been working on getting our migrant and title summer school up and running. We're currently in our second week, and we've experienced a little bit of what it might be like for the fall. So when we began our planning, we were going to open summer school in the hybrid model. And so we began registering all of our families and calling them, and we got about 100, low hundreds of people registered for summer school. And then we started watching all the COVID numbers climb. So we took a step back and had to kind of pivot in the moment the week before we opened summer school. So all of our teachers have done a fantastic job of switching from hybrid back into our digital learning mode. So I'm super proud of them. I've also been working on multiple teams, as Derek, Luke, and Karen were talking about, to create our district-wide and each school's individual blueprint. So my role on those teams is to look at it through that equity lens and the lens of inclusion for our students who experience disabilities, and also our populations for our English learners, our dual language learners, and for our migrant populations. We're still working on a lot of things. I'm working with a lot of other directors as well, and we compare our notes and we talk with each other and we see what other people are doing and we see what ODE's guidance is. They are still working on some of their special education guidance, so we're waiting for some of that to come out in August, and then I'm sure our plans will tweak a little bit in August from what we have down right now, but we feel pretty good about what we have down. And then once schools get their schedules built, that's kind of our next step. Then we'll be able to look at, okay, how are we going to service all of our students with multitudes of needs and a variety of specialized supports. So that'll be our next stage. Looking forward to that. It's been a lot of fun. And I sincerely mean that. It's been a learning experience and a learning curve. And for me, I always embrace learning. I'm a lifetime learner, so it excites me, and I really enjoy planning new things and planning new programs and projects. So I'm in my element right now. And we also have an abundance of evaluations that we had started in the springtime and gotten parental consent for, to look and see if a student might qualify to receive special education services. So those took a halt in March, April, and then we didn't resume any testing through the end of the year. Our plan was to resume in the fall. And then as this is continuing on, obviously, our plans have changed a little bit. So our psychologists are doing summer evaluations to play a little bit of catch up on some of the evaluations that we started in the spring, because there are timelines for different types of evaluations. So we have a 60-day timeline, 60 school days, and then 45-day timelines on some other specialized evaluations. So they've started those week before last as well, and those are up and running. And I asked for some comments back today to see, you know, how did that go? How was it, you know, to test a student sitting across a table 6 feet away with not a mask, because students have to see your lips move in certain assessments, because you're doing some speech, or you might be doing some vocabulary words where they need to see your face and they're repeating something back. So we did use the face shields, and that worked out fine. They just said, you know, it's a little interesting when you're sitting that far away, you know, you can't really, you know, touch the page, or you might have to get up and hand them, you know, some manipulatives that they might use during the testing. So it was neat to talk to people today and see how those are going, and they're going fairly well. So I'm pleased with that. We were a little bit concerned about number of evaluations for fall, so feel a little better now. Thank you.
Thanks, Anne. All right, so to wrap up before we start with some questions, right now our primary consideration is around a hybrid model. And that means that we are partially in person and partially at a distance. A-B cohorts, meaning they're just groups of A and group B. So depending upon which group you are, we're trying to group them, of course, also based upon family need and making sure that it makes it easier for families to have kids on the same schedule, because we know that's a very important consideration. Most likely a Monday, Wednesday, and a Tuesday, Thursday. We've also talked about a Monday, Tuesday, and a Wednesday, Thursday. We've had some feedback on that. Some of that will depend upon how we do meal service. I have had some questions about why can't we go every day like district so-and-so and other districts. We've heard that also. In each one of those cases, they normally have an additional building or two of buildings that they're no longer using, and they've been able to do that. We don't have that space, and we don't have that level of staffing. And so that's kind of one of the main things that had driven us back toward being able to split these up into half days. Lots of health protocols, as you heard before. Teachers planning together. Fridays will be days for staff to work connecting with families, working in teams to do their curricular work, connecting with kids as necessary, and doing the other stuff online. We will also have COA available, so that's our online academy, and we'll have people, we'll figure out here in the next few days what our drop dead date is for people to actually decide to go fully online with the COA program. It is different than the other school programs, so we'll have more information on that. So I think I'll pause there and see what kinds of questions you have about the timeline, the process, the model.
Are there questions from the board?
You mentioned that the blueprints were going to come out next week, and I was just wondering if you knew when next week and how that was going to get relayed. Will that be an email out to everybody? Yep.
Yeah, so we will. We are finalizing tomorrow our drafts with our our principals. We have a meeting with them to just go over, they've finalized with their teams. And so we're going to go over any final questions they may have. We meet with our on Thursday and track which one is which. But then we'll also post to the website, then let everybody know. We're also going to we'll review them, get feedback. So we'll get them out to the board and post on our website and start to feedback as well from folks, because we want to make sure we hear from them, hear their concerns. Last time during our distance learning, one of the things we did was build FAQs that were ever changing, because we knew that questions came up, and as they continued to be asked, we would always put those on there because people have very similar questions. And so we want to be able to make sure we can build our answers around the questions that people actually have. So we can only guesstimate which questions people have. We want to make sure we get them, cleared up as we go through. So yeah, those are coming post haste.
How many students would be in a classroom at the same time under the cohort model that you guys are considering?
Mm-hmm. Good question. It actually really depends upon the size of the classroom. So some classrooms are slightly larger than others. And so what we've done, and that's why each one of these blueprints is done on a per building level or per building basis, because it depends upon their classroom size. So it's anywhere from a dozen to up to 18, I think is about where we got to. But again, some of those classrooms, it really depends upon, because if you think about the square footage, we talk about 6 feet distance, it's really a lot of little circles and not actually little squares, because people's arms go out this way and they go that way and they go around in a circle. So you have to do, 2 pi d, and figure out the math on those to those. So it really depends. And that's why we had to go school by school. But some were within that range, between a dozen and 18.
I assume all these buildings sort of share a air circulation system. Are we planning on making students wear masks?
At this time, we can certainly ask people. We are not able to require students to wear masks according to the current guidance. And so we can certainly ask people. We think it's important that people wear masks all the time, but we're not able to require them at this time of students.
Are we requiring of teachers?
We actually are working on, so we have, teachers have, not all teachers, but many of them have expressed interest in face shields, because they can be seen. And especially, so the kids can see their face and their whole face and when they're talking and things like that. So those, that's been far more of interest for people to use shields. We've also, because as people come into the building, adults wearing masks, everybody who comes in. So we'll have some kind of a face covering for all staff.
Rebecca, you're muted.
Will we be using the gymnasiums or the auditoriums or the libraries as additional classrooms?
We'll be using every available space we have for certain kinds of things. There are other ones, of course, that we're not going to be able to offer. Again, those plans are still kind of in process, but how do we do things? I guess I would never have thought in my lifetime that choir would be the most dangerous course we provide students. And so we have to, and I only make slight light of it just because it seems so crazy. I was in the choir in high school. So, things like that, we may be using those spaces for being able to spread people out further so we can still offer some of those things. I think that one of the things that came up in our staff survey and in our parent survey is that they don't want to lose their electives if at all possible. So how do we make those happen and still make it happen in a safe manner? So I'm sure that some of those larger spaces will be used. But as a reminder, we only have, one per building. We'll have just one cafeteria or one other one. But since we most likely will not be eating in cafeterias, that probably allows that space to be used for something else.
I have a couple of questions. Are you hearing from teachers that how many are going to want to opt out of teaching in person, or that whole concern about their own safety?
Yeah, we have some of those which have come in. haven't had a huge amount of those yet, but I know that we will continue to hear from folks. And this is part of the conversation with the Oregon Health Authority, with our association, what we agree on, and then what the law says we're supposed to do. So we've got a lot of those. I think that's actually very, very complicated. And especially as we watch the case counts rise, I think that there will be some more fear among people, which I understand. So we have to find out what that balance is between people who are actually at risk and people who may just not feel that comfortable coming in. We also might find that many families want to keep their kids home and would like to, we'll have plenty of work to do in the background, or teaching students fully online, or teaching students in that, that cohort support model. So we may find that it actually works out okay to have a certain number of folks doing some of that support. So some of our model delivery will depend upon how many people are more interested or are feeling unsafe about coming into work. So yeah, we'll continue to hear more of that, I'm sure, as we get closer.
Well, the cohorts you mentioned would be trying to make it work for families. So I suppose that's the primary organizing principle. Are we going to try to do grouping by ability in any of that cohort? I mean, make cohorts of people of similar ability? I'm not favoring that. I'm a little worried about it. I just want to know what the plan is on that.
Well, no, so our cohorts are, the AB cohort is set up in such a way that we're trying to do our best to meet the needs of families who have kids in multiple levels or multiple classes. Right. We will try to balance them as much as possible, but every one of these factors we add in makes it even more complicated. So our primary concern is to help our families. And then secondly, we know we do have some students, and this was mentioned before by by three of the folks who spoke earlier. As we think about the AB cohorts, we also have some space available in each one of those classrooms, depending upon class level, for students who are struggling the most, because we remember we're trying to build this model around equity. And so we want to be able to bring in some students who would come 4 days a week or 3 days a week, depending upon who they are. And that's about getting some additional support. It could be special education, it could be English learners, it could be any number of factors. And so we're working on a matrix for those to help bring in those kids who need the additional support for the 3 or the 4 days a week. And so part of this cohort is we have a cohort model. I mean, we have a cohort group, and then we also have students who may come multiple days. Oh, you're muted again, Ron.
I'm sorry, I'm learning from you. Is Friday a day that would normally be available? I mean, are we going to use Fridays in a particular way, like for special needs students and things?
We actually going to use Fridays for connecting with all the students who we're not being able to connect with. It's been interesting because we're really focused on the COVID-19 and on the hybrid model, but we have people who get sick normally during the year on whatever kind of thing. It doesn't have to be, we're so focused right now on COVID in our minds, but people get sick just in general, or have something happen and they have to stay home. And so because we're in person seeing them 2 days a week, we've left Friday for staff planning day, working across the PLCs because they have to get their lessons created to be able to be posted, but we have to do them a week early because we have to make sure that the ones that need to get to translation services, that our translators have enough time to get those fully, and if they're not already pre-translated, then they may not be. So we have to give our translation staff enough time to get those turned around. And so, and also, like I said, connecting with students and families who maybe we're not hearing from, or maybe only made it 1 day a week. How do we, provide additional support for them? So Fridays generally, at least that's kind of where we are now, it's probably Friday, is a day for us to do all the other work, to get things planned, to get things prepped, and then connecting with all the folks with whom, if we're having some struggles. And that could include an online help session, right? Like I'm going to set aside a couple hours, I'm going to connect, and I got these 4 kids and I've got my educational assistant. So
my last question is about what you said, something about people. One of them, I think Karen said something about setting goals and things like that. I'm having trouble imagining how, and I'm not blaming anybody for this, but I'm having trouble imagining how we could possibly expect normal amounts of achievement and growth with this model, considering students are going to have 40% of their contact time and so forth. how are you, what can we expect? What should we be seeing? If things go well, what's the effect in terms of overall achievement for us?
So one of the things that we actually started working on a bit 2 years ago, and even last year, even more so when we were starting to do a lot of work around math, is to truly focus on the standards. And I think that sometimes we get wrapped up in the fact that we have to have people produce a bunch of things to prove that they're learning something. So we often will look at, when we talk about grades, like, well, they've done all these assignments, so they've reached this thing. And I think some of the work that we witnessed with our teachers working in PLCs is they got a lot better at focusing in on what's the standard I'm trying to teach. And we did that through, so Dr. Brown was working with our folks across the district in math. And those were the conversations they were having. How do we focus in better on standards? And then if we can think about this model as, our curriculum is, it's online, it's available. And then when they're in person, we're not spending all of our time doing other things. We're focusing in on the students who need the most support, on the standards work we're doing. We looked at, do we have a longer school day, a shorter school day? And, we determined even by having, sometimes we have this longer school day, but we end up using that time in other kinds of ways. So it's, I don't know if we're able to get through the same amount of content. It doesn't mean that we can't, but we have to kind of think about it differently and focus really hard on the standards. And that's part of the reason why we're continuing the work with the PLCs. And that's just hard work, but I think we can still get through a bunch of the standards that we're trying to get to and keep kids moving along. I think that we do actually have to reimagine what it is we do every day, because we are still in the mindset that we're going to stand in front of a group of kids and that's the only learning they're going to get. And that's not going to be true. They're going to have to do some learning when they're not in the room, and then when they are in the room. And so, you're going to get half one day and half the next day. And so it's just a kind of a change of mindset about, does it all have to be in person? And this is all, of course, assuming that we're doing a hybrid model. If something else happens and the numbers go crazy, we end up in a different place, and we're all at a distance again, then, we're back to some other kind of planning. But I don't think we're actually going to lose as much ground as we fear.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's we do a bunch of daily work. Like, think about, and I'll hammer on math for a second, and all math teachers don't hate on me for this. I'm just using that as an example so I can think about it. But we'll do daily work, daily worksheets, daily practice. Some of that daily practice is done in class. Sometimes it's done as homework. And so if we think about the days that you're not in that class, you're doing some of that work, but you're working on multiple standards. So your textbook may have your standard 1, 2, and 3, and we're going to practice those in class. You'll be doing those at home the next day. We'll come back and check. I've still worked on the same 3 standards I was going to work on all that week, right? But it doesn't mean that I had to do all that work while you were with me in the room. So maybe more of that self-practice is happening at home instead of doing it, while we're in the room together. So just some of that's just reimagine the use of time.
Thank you.
Yep.
Joe, what are the plans to deal with the students who took a not a fail but not a pass grade for the completion of work this last year?
Right, the incomplete. That was the other option. Yes.
Yeah.
So part of the requirements from this last spring under the distance learning for all model was that we have built a plan with each of them. And so by September, they have to have a plan available. And then they have through the end of this coming school year to do that. So I know that they did work hard at the high school to make sure they got a hold of all of those. And they'll have some support classes and some other things to help them get through. Because sometimes it may be just 1 or 2 things that needs to get them across the bar. And so each one, that's why it's an individual plan for each one of the kids. But they were able to bring that number down pretty far by spending a bunch of extra time in the last few weeks, calling, getting hold of folks to get them across there. But they have through the end of next year to finalize those incomplete grades into passes.
Joe, I'll just chime in to say the high school also engaged many of those students through some online learning this summer to get them to cross that line. So they recovered a number of credits through that.
Right. I'm sure their parents were happy to have them just keep doing something in the summertime, get that done.
I know it's something that's out of our control, but have you heard what the guidance is currently on state mandated testing and some of the standardized testing that was suspended in the spring? Just curious if you've heard yet what the which way the wind is blowing for those tests come fall.
Sure. Eric?
Yeah, I can take that one. Yeah, ODE sent us an update a couple months ago, so they are planning on running the full suite of state standardized tests for English language arts, math, English language proficiency, science, and social studies this coming year. The kindergarten assessment that you are all familiar with that happens typically during the first few weeks of the school year is not going to be happening. So they have canceled that one for next year. But we will see the rest of the tests are currently scheduled to take place until further notice. They did adjust the windows a little bit, and I can send you more specific information about what they're telling us about the testing windows. But we expect our students to be participating in those tests next year.
Okay, are there any other questions from the board? I want to say thank you for those Chromebooks over the summer. This is just one family speaking out about it, but they are helpful. So thank you. I think I'm hopeful that they will help all kids throughout the district in that traditional sort of slump that we see during summer break. So I think it's huge.
Let's say we all.
All right, if there's no more questions from the board, then we'll say thank you to everyone who stayed up and presented. And we look forward to updates. This feels really reminiscent of the budget situation, going through budget committee. It's, we're doing this and we'll see what happens in the coming
We'll
weeks.
see what happens next, right? Yep.
Yeah, thank you. So we had talked about doing board goals. It's 9:30 and I am both physically and emotionally exhausted. I would recommend that we put it on the July 28th agenda simply because we traditionally only have one July meeting for the board, and this month we're having two. So that agenda is fairly open, and also that might give a chance to get polling results potentially from the bond poll, which would be really helpful in our discussion. So that's my proposal, but it's up to the board. How would you all like to proceed?
I would like to proceed in the way that you just mentioned, Brandy. I have a couple grant deadlines to complete, so.
Okay. Yeah, and Ron and Rebecca and I will hit the ground running in 12 hours with our policy committee meetings. Okay. Unless anyone has some big objections, I think that's the direction we'll go.
I agree with that, but I would also like to figure out, make sure that we've got early action on the start time expiration, because I don't want to see that slip. And I know the staff is fried right now too, so I don't know when that to do. I just probably will keep bringing it up until we get it done. And there's been, how do we start working on the equity stuff? Maybe that's, some other things have to happen before then, but I don't know. I don't want to leave that unattended. And I'm wondering if there's any way that the board can start on its level of work while the staff is still working on other issues. But just two things that I don't want to see us forget about. And the third, I was going to mention the bond, but you already mentioned that for next time. So.
Okay, all good points. All right, well, our next right now for our July, also, I wanted to point out the future board meeting agendas. Normally at this meeting, we would have them kind of mapped out for the year. However, it was with everything else going on a little bit too much, and I didn't want us to have, Ron and I talked about it in the agenda meeting with Greg and Joe, and we both felt like it was important to have something for the coming up meeting on the 28th, but not necessarily for the whole year mapped out quite as thoroughly as maybe we have in the past. So right now you'll see a pretty light agenda for next board meeting. Are there any questions around that?
Brandy, I don't have a question, but I just wanted to give you a heads up. One of the things with all the COVID juggling, I try not to do things that are conflict with board meetings. But next, on the 28th, I will be camping up on Mount Hood. If I can get reception, I will try and attend, but I won't be somewhere that's it's kind of hit or miss. So I may or may not be able to attend.
That would be epic if we had you on your cell phone as darkness is falling on Mount Hood, out on some crag.
Well, I do, because we're camping at Tilly Jane, if you're familiar with that, and the higher up you go, the better the cell phone reception is.
Exactly.
So to hike up a little bit.
That would be legendary. Everybody would talk about it. I want to see it happen.
If it can't or doesn't happen, we understand, Bob, and thank you for the heads up.
Yeah, yeah. A little lantern or a candle so we can see your face. Yeah, perfect.
Like a pioneer. I like it.